There's a strange moment that comes to most people at some point in their lives. You're sitting quietly, perhaps in the evening when the day has settled, and you notice something. Everyone else seems to be moving forward, upward, somewhere, and you're here, alone with your thoughts, alone with the questions that don't seem to have answers. And in that stillness, a feeling creeps in, not dramatic, not even particularly painful at first, just this quiet sense that perhaps you're the only one who doesn't quite know what they're doing. It's not that you lack intelligence or capability. It's something else entirely. It's the feeling that everyone else received instructions you somehow missed, that there's a current moving through life, carrying others along, and you're standing on the shore watching it pass. And the question that forms, usually late at night when the mind won't settle, is this: what do I do when there's no one here to tell me I'm going the right way? Now, most people, when they feel this, respond in predictable ways. They try harder. They search for mentors, for guidance, for some external voice of authority to provide reassurance. And there's nothing wrong with seeking help, with learning from others. But here's what's interesting, and this is where things get subtle. The very act of looking outside yourself for the answer can sometimes reinforce the problem you're trying to solve, because the real difficulty isn't that you lack support. The real difficulty is that you've been operating under a fundamental misunderstanding about what you are and how you relate to the world around you. And until this misunderstanding is seen clearly, no amount of external help will quite settle the question. Let me explain what I mean. We grow up learning to think of ourselves as separate things. You are you, contained within your skin, and the world is out there, separate from you. You came into this world, we say, as if the world were a room, and you were a visitor who arrived from somewhere else. And once you accept this picture, once you really believe it, then of course you feel alone. Because if you're fundamentally separate from everything around you, then you're always in a sense isolated. You're a fragment, trying to make your way through a world that isn't really yours, that doesn't really belong to you, that might help you or might not, depending on circumstances beyond your control. But what if this entire picture is wrong? Not wrong in some abstract philosophical sense, but wrong in a way that actually matters, that changes how you experience every single moment of your life. Think about a wave on the ocean. When you look at a wave, you see something distinct, something you can point to and say there's a wave. It has a shape, a height, a particular character. And in one sense, it is separate. It's not the same as the wave next to it. But in another, more fundamental sense, the wave isn't separate from the ocean at all. It didn't come into the ocean from somewhere else. It came out of the ocean. It's a temporary expression of the ocean, a way the ocean has of moving and shaping itself. You can't actually draw a line where the wave ends and the ocean begins, can you? They're continuous. The wave is made of ocean. When the wave falls, it doesn't disappear. It returns to what it always was. The ocean doesn't lose a wave. The ocean simply stops waving in that particular way. Now here's the thing. You are to this universe what a wave is to the ocean. You didn't come into this world. You came out of it. You're not a separate thing that arrived here and now must figure out how to survive in a foreign environment. You're a natural expression of everything that's around you, continuous with it, made of the same substance, following the same patterns. The earth peoples, in the same way that an apple tree, apples, or a grapevine, grapes. You're not on this earth. You're a way the earth has of experiencing itself, of becoming conscious, of looking around and wondering what it all means. When you understand this, really understand it, not just intellectually, but in your bones, the entire question of being alone shifts. Because if you're continuous with the world, if you're a natural expression of it, then the support you're looking for isn't something external. That might or might not arrive. It's already here. It's always been here. You're standing in it, breathing it, made of it. The very fact that you exist means you're supported completely by everything around you and everything that came before you. But here's where most people get stuck. They hear this idea, and it sounds nice, perhaps even beautiful, but then they go back to their lives, and nothing seems to change. They still feel alone. They still don't know what to do. And the reason is this: understanding something intellectually is not the same as seeing it directly. Let me give you an example. You know intellectually that the earth is round and rotating through space. But when you look around, it doesn't feel that way, does it? It feels flat and still. Your direct experience contradicts what you know to be true, and your experience is more powerful than your knowledge. You live according to your experience, not according to facts you've learned. In the same way, you might understand intellectually that you're not separate from the world, but if your experience is still one of isolation, of being a small separate self facing a large and different universe, then that's how you live. The knowing has to become seeing. The idea has to become experience. And this brings us to something crucial, something that seems like a paradox, but isn't. The harder you try to make this shift happen, the more elusive it becomes. I call this the backwards law. It's the principle that says certain things can't be achieved by trying to achieve them. The more you try to fall asleep, the more awake you remain. The more you try to remember a forgotten name, the further it slips away. And the more desperately you try to force yourself to feel connected, to feel supported, to feel confident and clear about your direction, the more tense and isolated you become. Why? Because effort creates tension. And tension is the opposite of the natural flowing state in which real clarity and confidence arise. When you're trying too hard to get somewhere, to become something, to achieve some future state where things will finally be okay, you're actually preventing the very thing you're seeking. Think about music. When you listen to a piece of music, you're not waiting for it to end. You're not thinking, I can't wait until we get to the final note, so this will be over. That would be absurd. The point of music isn't to reach the end. The point is the listening itself, the experience of each note, each phrase, each movement as it unfolds. If you were only interested in the ending, you'd just skip to the last note, but that wouldn't be music anymore, would it? Life is much more like music than we typically acknowledge. We treat it like a journey, from point A to point B, where B is somehow better, more complete, more satisfactory than A. We're always trying to get ahead, to reach some future moment where we'll finally have what we need, where we'll finally be who we're supposed to be. And in this constant reaching forward, we miss the only thing that's actually happening this moment, right here, right now. The obsession with getting ahead is itself the obstacle, because when you're fixated on the future, on what you don't yet have, on what you're not yet capable of, you can't be fully present to what is. And it's only in presence, in direct engagement with what's actually here, that real movement happens. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't make plans or work toward things. That would be equally absurd. Of course, you need to prepare for winter, to plant seeds for future harvest, to develop skills and knowledge, but there's a difference between doing these things from a place of natural engagement and doing them from a place of anxious grasping. When a farmer plants seeds, he's not tormented by the fact that he doesn't yet have the harvest. He plants because it's spring, and planting is what you do in spring. There's a natural rhythm to it, a participation in the cycles of growth and rest. He's not trying to force the wheat to grow faster. He's working with the grain of reality, not against it. And this is what I mean by moving naturally. It's action that arises from direct response to what is, rather than from anxiety about what isn't. It's doing what wants to be done, not because you should, or because you'll be punished if you don't, but because it's simply the next natural step. But to move this way requires something we've largely forgotten: trust. Not blind faith in some external authority, but trust in your own nature, in the intelligence that's already operating within you. Think about how a cloud forms in the sky. Does the cloud doubt itself? Does it wonder whether it should be this shape or that shape, whether it's forming correctly, whether other clouds are doing better? Of course not. The cloud simply forms according to conditions: temperature, humidity, air currents. It doesn't hesitate. It doesn't second guess. It's completely natural, completely effortless. Not because no energy is involved, but because there's no resistance, no internal conflict. Or consider a wave rising in the ocean. The wave doesn't wonder if it's good enough, if it's rising at the right time, if it should be bigger or smaller. It simply rises, because rising is what waves do in those conditions. And then it falls, because falling is what waves do. The entire process is effortless, because the wave isn't separate from the ocean, trying to be something it's not. It's just being what it is. And you, in your deepest nature, are much more like this than you realize. When you're not tangled up in thoughts about who you should be and what you should be doing, there's a natural intelligence that operates through you. Not the intelligence of conscious planning and calculation, though that has its place, but the deeper intelligence that beats your heart without you thinking about it, that digests your food while you sleep, that heals your cuts without conscious instruction. This intelligence knows what to do. It's been navigating your life all along, beneath the level of your worry and doubt. Your conscious mind, with all its anxiety and second guessing, is like a person sitting in the back of a car, gripping the seat and tensing their muscles, thinking they're helping to drive, but the car is already being driven. The tensing doesn't help. It just creates unnecessary suffering. The difficulty is that we've been taught not to trust this deeper intelligence. We've been taught that without constant vigilance, constant effort, constant control, we'll fail. We'll be lazy, we'll make mistakes, we'll be left behind. And so we grip tighter, we try harder. We fill every moment with doing and planning and worrying. And in this constant tension, we lose touch with the very thing that could actually guide us. Now, what happens when you begin to let go of this tension? What happens when you stop trying so hard to force things to be different than they are? Most people are afraid to find out. They're afraid they'll collapse into passivity, that nothing will get done, that they'll just drift aimlessly. But this fear is based on a misunderstanding, because letting go of forced effort isn't the same as doing nothing. It's the beginning of a different kind of action, one that's more responsive, more intelligent, more alive. When you're not constantly interfering with yourself, not constantly second-guessing and doubting and tensing up, action arises naturally from your direct perception of what's needed. You see something that wants to be done, and you do it. Not because you should, not because you're trying to get somewhere, but simply because it's the natural response to what you're seeing. This is what real confidence looks like. Not the loud, aggressive confidence that needs to prove itself constantly, but the quiet confidence of something that knows its own nature. A tree doesn't doubt its ability to grow. It simply grows, responding to sunlight and water and seasons. There's a profound intelligence in that, an intelligence that doesn't require thought or planning. It's direct, immediate, appropriate to the situation. And you have access to this same quality of intelligence, not by trying to acquire it, but by stopping the interference that prevents it from operating naturally. By stopping the constant internal commentary that says you're not good enough, not ready, not capable, by stopping the comparison with others, the measurement against imagined standards, by simply being present to what is and allowing your natural response to arise. But this requires a willingness to be with yourself in a way that most people find uncomfortable. It requires solitude, not necessarily physical aloneness, though that can help, but a deeper kind of solitude, a willingness to be with your own experience without constantly reaching for distraction, without constantly seeking validation or reassurance from outside. And this is where we return to the original question. What do you do when no one is there for you? Because solitude, which seems like the problem, is actually the doorway. When you're truly alone, without the usual noise and distraction, without other voices telling you who to be and what to want. Something interesting begins to happen. The constant mental chatter starts to settle. All the stories about what's wrong and what needs to be fixed, all the comparisons and judgments and anxieties, they don't disappear immediately, but they begin to quiet down. And in that quieting, you might notice something remarkable. You're still here. Beneath all the thoughts and stories and interpretations, there's a simple presence, a simple awareness that's been here all along. The awareness that looks through your eyes, that hears sounds, that knows when thoughts are happening. This awareness hasn't gone anywhere. It's been constant throughout your entire life, steady and unchanging, while everything else has come and gone. And this awareness itself isn't lonely. It can't be lonely, because loneliness is a thought, a story about being separate and isolated. But awareness isn't thinking those thoughts, it's noticing them. And in noticing, there's already a natural distance, a natural freedom from the content of thought. This is what I mean when I say that awareness itself is not alone. It's always in direct contact with experience, with life as it's actually happening. The sense of separation, of isolation, is something added by thought. It's a story overlaid on the simple fact of being here, being aware, being alive. When you touch this directly, even briefly, something shifts, because you realize that you've never actually been alone. You've always been in the most intimate possible contact with reality, experiencing it directly, moment by moment. What you thought was isolation was just a thought about isolation appearing in awareness like any other thought. And this realization doesn't come from trying to make it happen. It comes from simply being present, being willing to sit with your experience as it is without immediately trying to fix it or change it or escape from it. It comes from the kind of solitude that isn't running away from connection, but is paradoxically the deepest possible connection. Connection with the ground of your own being. Now, I want to be very clear about something. This isn't about denying the human need for relationship, for community, for shared experience. Those needs are real and natural. We are social creatures. We learn from each other. We grow through relationship. We find joy in company. None of this is negated by what I'm saying. What I'm suggesting is that when you make other people responsible for your sense of wholeness, when you believe you cannot be okay without their approval or support or presence, you create a relationship that's based on need rather than on freedom. You're not really meeting them. You're trying to get something from them. And they can feel this, even if they can't quite name it. And they often respond by pulling away, which only reinforces your sense of isolation. But when you discover your own ground, when you find that basic okayness that doesn't depend on external circumstances, then relationship becomes something different. You meet people not because you desperately need them to complete you, but because it's natural and joyful to share this experience of being alive. The relationship becomes an expression of fullness rather than an attempt to fill an emptiness. And here's the beautiful thing. When you stop needing people in that desperate, grasping way, genuine connection often becomes easier because you're not performing anymore. You're not trying to be someone you think they'll approve of. You're simply present. And presence has a quality that invites others to be present as well. This brings us back to the question of getting ahead, of making progress when you feel alone. And what I hope you're beginning to see is that the entire framing of the question contains hidden assumptions that need to be examined. Getting ahead implies a race. It implies that there's somewhere better to be than where you are. It implies measurement, comparison, a hierarchy of better and worse. And all of this creates a constant state of insufficiency, a perpetual sense that you're not quite there yet, not quite enough. But what if there's nowhere to get to? What if the only moment you ever actually have is this one? Right here, right now. Not as a philosophical idea, but as a simple fact of your direct experience. You can remember the past, but you remember it now. You can plan for the future, but you plan for it now. The only place you ever actually exist is in this present moment. And if this is true, if the present moment is all you ever actually have, then the idea of getting ahead becomes rather strange, doesn't it? It's like trying to arrive at a destination you're already at. You can move, certainly, things can change, but you're always here in this moment, wherever and whatever this moment happens to be. The wisdom isn't in getting somewhere else. The wisdom is in being fully where you are, engaged completely with what's actually present, rather than what you wish were present or what you fear might be present in the future. This doesn't mean you don't make plans. This doesn't mean you don't work toward things, don't develop skills, don't pursue interests, but the motivation changes. You're not doing it to finally arrive at some imagined future where you'll be complete, where you'll finally have permission to relax and enjoy life. You're doing it because it's what's naturally arising in this moment, because it's engaging, because it's what wants to happen. And when you operate this way, something interesting occurs. Progress often happens more easily than when you're trying to force it, because you're not wasting enormous amounts of energy fighting yourself, doubting yourself, comparing yourself to others, worrying about whether you're doing it right. You're simply engaged with what's in front of you, and that engagement tends to be far more effective than anxious striving. Think about the difference between trying to grab water with a clenched fist and simply cupping your hands and letting water flow into them. When you grab, the water escapes between your fingers. When you open, it collects naturally. Life works much the same way. When you're grasping at outcomes, controlling for every variable, you create resistance. When you're open and responsive, things tend to flow more smoothly. But again, I want to be careful not to make this sound like a technique, like something you do in order to get what you want. Because if you're being open in order to manipulate outcomes, you're still grasping, just with a different strategy. What I'm pointing to is more fundamental than technique. It's a shift in how you understand yourself and your relationship to everything around you. When you really see, not just intellectually, but as lived experience, that you're not separate from the world, that you're a natural expression of it, then the urgent question of what you should do becomes less pressing, because you begin to trust that the same intelligence that grows trees and turns seeds into flowers is operating in you, not as something separate that you have to try to access, but as what you fundamentally are beneath all the layers of self-doubt and second-guessing. Your job isn't to force this intelligence to work or to control its outcomes. Your job is to stop interfering with it, to stop the constant doubt and questioning and tensing up, to stop treating yourself as a problem that needs to be solved, and instead recognize yourself as a natural process that's already unfolding, whether you worry about it or not. The heart beats, the lungs breathe, cells divide and heal. None of this requires your conscious control. And in the same way, there's a deeper movement in your life, a natural unfolding that doesn't require constant management. When you're aligned with this, when you're not fighting it or doubting it or trying to improve on it, life has a quality of ease that has nothing to do with everything being perfect and everything to do with being in harmony with what is. This is what real freedom looks like. Not freedom from difficulty or challenge. Those are part of life, unavoidable, sometimes even valuable. But freedom from the constant tension of believing you're insufficient, of believing you're separate and alone and must somehow prove yourself worthy of existence. You don't have to prove yourself worthy of existence. You exist. That's the proof. The universe doesn't make mistakes in this way. Every single thing that exists has a place, a function, a rightness to it, even if we can't always see what that is from our limited perspective. An acorn doesn't doubt whether it should become an oak tree. It doesn't wonder if it's good enough, if it has what it takes. It simply begins growing, responding to conditions, becoming what it naturally is. And you're the same. You're not a mistake. You're not insufficient. You're not separate from the life that's moving through everything around you. You're an expression of it, unique and valuable simply by virtue of being here. And when you really get this, when it's not just an idea but a felt sense of your own nature, the whole game changes. You stop postponing life until conditions are right. You stop holding back until you feel ready. You stop waiting for permission or validation or someone to arrive and make it all okay. Because you realize that you're already okay. Not because everything is perfect, but because your okayness doesn't depend on everything being perfect. It's prior to circumstances, deeper than conditions, more fundamental than any temporary state of affairs. It's the simple fact of being here, aware, alive, participating in this extraordinary mystery of existence. This is what was always here, beneath the loneliness, beneath the doubt, beneath the searching. Not something you need to achieve or acquire or become worthy of, but what you already are and have always been. The support you were looking for wasn't missing. You were just looking in the wrong direction, outside yourself, rather than recognizing that you're inseparable from the very ground of being itself. And so when you find yourself alone, when the voices go quiet and you're left with only your own thoughts, perhaps the question isn't how to find someone to save you. Perhaps the question is whether you're willing to see what's been here all along. The silence isn't empty. The solitude isn't abandonment. It's an invitation to discover what you are beneath, all the stories, all the roles, all the attempts to be something other than what you naturally are. And what you find there, in that discovery, is not a lonely, isolated self trying to make its way through an indifferent universe. What you find is awareness itself, open and clear and intimately connected to everything, not separate from life but continuous with it, not lacking support but being the very ground from which all support arises. This is freedom. This is home. This is what was never lost and can never be found because it's what you already are. You just forgot to notice. And the moment you notice, really notice, everything is already different. Not because circumstances have changed, but because you've stopped arguing with reality. You've stopped believing the story of separation. You've come home to what you've always been. Not a wave trying to survive on its own, but the ocean itself playing at being a wave, pretending to be separate just for the sheer joy and wonder of rediscovering that it never was.